Among the many characters that fans hope to see in the game's future is Miles Donald. For many, his quest to find his missing wife Michiko creates a romantic and moving story. This has led fans to eagerly anticipate his arrival as a playable character, even though NetEase has yet to confirm when he will be added. Given Miles's personality and the details we learn from Michiko's letters, fans believe he would make a great addition as a survivor. However, many of the game's survivors, though not all, have some kind of misdeed or dark past that brought them to the manor. Take Vera Nair, Freddie Riley, or the latest addition, Richard Sterling, for example. This raises a compelling question. If so many survivors have a darker side, could Miles also have secrets? This idea has sparked plenty of wild theories. The most intriguing suggests that the caring, loving version of Miles is simply how Michiko sees him, while the real Miles hides a much darker side. But is that really the case? Well, folks, let's dive into it. This is your broadcaster Selmina, and today, we'll explore the mysteries surrounding Miles Donald and the grim theories about who he truly is. First, let's dive into the story of Miles Donald. Currently, he's a non-playable character in the game, known as Michiko's husband. He is portrayed as a loving and caring partner, determined to search for Michiko when she mysteriously goes missing. We learn about Miles's backstory through Michiko's deduction quest and letters. According to these files, Miles was a foreign military officer stationed in Japan. He met Michiko at a banquet, and the two eventually fell in love. He adored Michiko, showering her with gifts, one of which was a hat pin, which became the keepsake of Michiko. His love for her was so strong that he decided to marry her and take her to his hometown. However, Miles's father did not approve of their marriage. During Miles's absence while on duty overseas, his father went as far as to have Michiko killed. To cover his tracks, he hired a man named Eugene Hayward to dispose of her body. When Miles returned, his father lied, claiming that Michiko had run off with another man and urging Miles to move on and find a new wife. But Miles refused to believe this story. Convinced that Michiko was still out there, he posted missing person notices and continued searching for her. At one point, his close friend Martha Bahamphil offered to assist in the search. She uncovered a lead. A hat pin, the very keepsake Miles had given Michiko, had appeared in an auction house. Unfortunately, the hat pin had already been sold to a new owner. Martha then proposed that she and Miles visit the manor of the gentleman who had purchased it, offering to take Miles along. Miles agreed to the plan, but when he arrived at the manor, Martha was nowhere to be found, even though she was supposed to arrive 3 days earlier. A manor servant presented Miles with the hat pin, though it had lost its original shape. The servant then gave Miles a choice. He could leave with a hat pin or stay and participate in a manor game to uncover the true story behind Michiko's disappearance. Miles chose the latter. From Michiko's later letters, it is suggested that Miles met his end during this game. A similar fate seems to have befallen Martha, whose identity was later assumed by the coordinator. Whether Miles ever discovered what truly happened to Michiko remains unknown. Identity 5 often draws inspiration from various pop culture stories, and Michiko's backstory is no exception. Her story is influenced by Madamma Butterfly, a short story by American writer John Luther Long. First published in 1898, the story has since been adapted into operas, songs, and films, with some details changing over time. However, the core narrative remains intact. Here, I'll recount the version from the famous 1904 opera by Giacomo Puccini. opera begins with U.S. Navy officer Benjamin Franklin Pinkerton, who rents a house in Nagasaki, Japan, for himself and his bride, Chu Sho-sun, whose name means butterfly in Japanese. Butterfly, a young geisha, is deeply committed to their marriage, seeing it as a true bond of love. She is so devoted that she converts to Christianity, hoping it will strengthen her connection to Pinkerton. However, Pinkerton views the marriage as a temporary arrangement. During their wedding ceremony, Butterfly's uncle curses her for abandoning her religion, and her family rejects her. Despite this, Butterfly remains steadfast in her devotion. Shortly after, Pinkerton leaves for America, promising to return one day. 3 years go by, and Butterfly continues to wait faithfully for Pinkerton, even as her maid Suzuki expresses doubts. Butterfly believes that Pinkerton will honor his promise, dreaming of a future where they are reunited as a family. During this time, she has also given birth to Pinkerton's son, whom she names Sorrow. One day, Mr. Sharpless, the American consul, visits Butterfly with a letter from Pinkerton. Before he can share the painful news that Pinkerton is returning with an American wife, Butterfly proudly shows him their son. Shocked, Sharpless hesitates to tell her the truth, and instead suggests that she consider marrying a wealthy Japanese suitor, Prince Yamadori. But Butterfly refuses, holding on to her hope that Pinkerton will return. Later, Butterfly sees Pinkerton's ship approaching the harbor. Overjoyed, she and Suzuki prepare the house with flowers, staying up all night to await his arrival. However, Pinkerton does not come to the house that night. The next morning, Pinkerton arrives with his American wife, Kate, intending to take the child back to America, believing it would offer him a better life. When Butterfly realizes that Pinkerton has moved on, she is devastated. Unable to face her himself, Pinkerton leaves Sharpless and Kate to break the news to Butterfly. She eventually agrees to give up her son, but only on the condition that Pinkerton personally comes to take him. After they leave, Butterfly, heartbroken, prepares to end her life. She says a final goodbye to her son, blindfolding him so he won't witness what she is about to do. Using a dagger, she takes her own life. As she lies dying, Pinkerton returns, calling out her name, but it is too late. Butterfly dies as he rushes in, realizing the tragic consequences of his actions. Beyond Michiko's story being inspired by Madame Butterfly, Identity V has taken inspiration from various popular stories for its character backgrounds. For example, the Hullabaloo event draws from the Spanish film Balada Triste de Trompeta, or The Last Circus. The movie's plot centers on a love triangle between a sad clown named Javier, a happy clown named Sergio, and a woman named Natalia. In the Hullabaloo lore, the characters align closely. The weeping clown is called Joker, the happy clown is Sergey, and the female lead is Natalie. Quite a clear inspiration, right? There are other parallels too. Take Emily Dyer, whose real name is Lydia Jones, inspired by the real-life figure Amelia Dyer. Both had medical training, with Emily became a doctor, while Amelia was a nurse. However, both turned to darker practices for income. Emily secretly conducted illegal abortions in her clinic, while Amelia engaged in something called baby farming. And there's more. Consider Marie Antoinette and Mary de Capet. The similarities between their lives are striking, as I discussed in a previous video. Both married nobles from foreign lands, both suffered from depression, and both became targets of false accusations, ultimately leading to their tragic ends. Even the main story of Identity V has shades of Agatha Christie's novel, And Then There Were None, where each game participant is drawn to a mysterious manor through strange invitations, either due to blackmail or the promise of something they desperately want. Taking all those inspirations into consideration, a question arises. Are Miles and Michiko meant to parallel Pinkerton and Butterfly from Madame Butterfly? While there are definitely similarities, a true parallel might be a stretch. Or at least, I hope so. Pinkerton, in Madame Butterfly, is a real jerk. He marries a young geisha who devotes her life to him, but he only views their marriage as a temporary arrangement. He leaves Butterfly behind in Japan and later returns with a new wife, just to take his son back to America. Honestly, if I were Butterfly, I might have made the same choice as she did, ending her life instead of living with the heartache for the rest of her lifetime. Well, think about it. This was a time when there were no phones, no video calls, no airplanes, nothing to keep in touch. And yet, despite the lack of communication for years, Butterfly remains unwaveringly faithful to Pinkerton, never doubting him even for once. And yet, Pinkerton just betrays her like that, coming to her bringing a new wife only to take their kid. What a true villain, isn't he? But based on Michiko's birthday letter, it seems that Miles is different from Pinkerton. Instead of abandoning Michiko in Japan, he brought her back to his hometown, even though he eventually had to leave for his overseas duties. When Michiko went missing, he was desperate to find her, going as far as to join the dangerous manor game, which ultimately led to his demise. Yet, there's one nagging thought that bugs me, and other lore enthusiasts. IDV survivors are often not exactly good people. Not all, but many have their own dark pasts. Just look at Vera, Freddy, Creature, and even the newest addition, Richard. With that in mind, could it be that Miles has some hidden story too? After all, everything we know about Miles comes from Michiko's perspective. Could it be that the version of Miles we know is just how Michiko sees him? Similar to how Butterfly idealized Pinkerton? Now that would make for a wild and shocking plot twist. But I sincerely hope that's not the case, because so far, NetEase has painted a picture of Miles as a devoted and loving husband. His desperation and determination to find Michiko suggest he truly loves her. If it turns out that Miles has a hidden dark side, and that everything we've seen in Michiko's letters is just her rose-tinted view of him, it would turn the story upside down. As it stands, the theory that Miles is secretly evil also lacks solid evidence, aside from the fact that many IDV survivors have questionable pasts or are outright villains. But since NetEase hasn't given us any new information about Miles yet, that theory, while unconvincing, still lingers. We'll just have to wait until the day Miles becomes a playable character to find out whether he's the loving husband we've come to believe he is, or if he's more like Pinkerton, breaking his wife's heart to pieces. This is your broadcaster, Selmina, signing off. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.